Story 1. The Foundation That Breathed. The concrete was warm. That's what I noticed first when I pressed my hand against the foundation wall at 2:17 a.m. Not cool like concrete should be after sunset in October. Warm, body temperature warm. My name's Marcus Webb, and I'd been pouring foundations for Tellerman Construction out of Pittsburgh for 11 years. Night crew paid 30% more, and the site stayed quiet except for our equipment. I'd worked the Manchester Street development for 3 weeks without incident. A 12-story residential building going up where the old Mercy Hills Psychiatric Hospital had been demolished 6 months prior. The foundation was our job. 23,000 square feet of rebar and concrete sunk 8 feet into clay soil that had a weird reddish tint none of us liked talking about. Marcus, you feel this? That was Deshaun, my finisher, running his trowel along the north wall. The scraping sound stopped. Started, stopped again. The concrete's moving. It's setting. You know how it... No. He pulled his hand back fast. It moved, like breathing. I thought he was fucking with me until I saw his face in the work lights. Deshaun had been in Fallujah. I'd seen him work through a dislocated shoulder without breaking. He wasn't scared easy. But right then, his eyes had that 1,000-yard look. I put my palm flat against the wall again. Waited. The concrete was definitely warm, and there. A subtle expansion. Then contraction. The rhythm was too regular, too organic. Maybe it's the rebar expanding, I said, not believing it myself. Temperature differential or... The walkie-talkie on my belt crackled. Marcus, we got a problem with the east pour. That was Cisco, our foreman. His voice had an edge I'd never heard. You need to see this now. The east section was where we'd poured that afternoon. Should have been fully set by now, surface hard enough to walk on. Instead, I found Cisco and 3 other guys, standing 15 feet back from the forms, work lights trained on the surface. The concrete was moving, not settling, moving, rippling like muscle under skin. It's been doing this for 10 minutes, Cisco said quietly. Started right after we heard the sounds. What sounds? He didn't answer, just pointed to the center of the pour, where the concrete was now forming a depression. Something was pressing up from underneath. Not breaking through, the surface stayed intact. But rising, creating a dome that had to be 3 feet across. Then we heard it, muffled, coming from inside the concrete itself. Knocking, not random. A pattern. 3 slow knocks. Pause, 3 more. Pause, 3 more. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. The knocking stopped. The dome flattened. For maybe 20 seconds, everything was still. Then the concrete began forming shapes, ridges rising up like someone was dragging their fingers through it from underneath. Except concrete doesn't work that way. Once it sets, it's done. But this was forming letters. Rough, uneven, but readable in the harsh LED work lights. H-E-L-P. Shut it down, I said. Shut everything down. We're calling... The letters sank back into smoothness. New ones formed, faster this time. T-O-O-L-A-T-E. The temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath. All of us. White clouds in the October air that had been mild 30 seconds ago. The work lights flickered. In that strobe effect, I saw something that made my stomach lurch. Every section we'd poured, north, south, east, west walls, the floor, all of it was rising and falling now. Breathing, the entire foundation breathing in unison like we'd built lungs instead of a building base. Back to the trucks, Cisco said. Now. We didn't run, but we moved fast. Behind us, the sound changed, not knocking anymore, whispering, Dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, all speaking at once from inside the concrete. I couldn't make out words, just the urgent, desperate tone of people trying to be heard. I was 10 feet from my truck when Deshaun grabbed my arm. "The plans," he said. "Marcus, the site plans. Where did they say the hospital morgue was?" My blood went cold. I'd reviewed those demolition surveys. The main building had been razed, but some of the substructure, the morgue was sub-basement level, I said slowly. They filled it in rather than excavate. Said it was more cost-effective to build over it than remove it. How many bodies were in there when the hospital closed? I'd read that too. Part of the environmental assessment. Mercy Hill had shut down in the 90s during a scandal. Something about patient deaths. The state investigation had been sealed, but the paperwork mentioned remains in temporary storage pending family claims. 47, I whispered. Unclaimed patients. They were supposed to relocate them, but the whispering from the foundation rose to a roar, not angry, pleading, and underneath it, a wet, rhythmic sound like a heartbeat amplified through a stadium speaker system. The concrete was glowing now, a faint reddish light pulsing from within, matching that heartbeat rhythm. Cisco was on his phone, yelling at someone. "I don't give a shit what it costs. We need ground-penetrating radar here by sunrise. No, we're not coming back until..." The screaming started, not from us, from the foundation. High-pitched, agonized, multiple voices overlapping. The concrete surface began cracking, but nothing came through. The cracks formed patterns. Faces, I realized. Dozens of faces pressed against the inside of the concrete, like people trapped under ice. Their mouths open, eyes wide. One face was directly in front of me, 15 feet away, but clear in the work lights. A woman, middle-aged, her mouth forming words I could read. "Why did you seal us in?" "We didn't," I said, knowing it was insane to respond. "We didn't know you were liars." The word came from everywhere at once, making the ground vibrate. "You all knew. You always know." The truck behind me started on its own, engine roaring to life. Then another. All 6 vehicles in our crew, engines running, headlights blazing. The radios in each truck turned on simultaneously, all tuned to static that resolved into a voice. Calm, clinical, male. Patient log, November 13th, 1994. Subjects 17 through 63 are responding poorly to protocol nightshade. Vitals are erratic. Dr. Kelson suggests increasing dosage. I have recommended against this, but I am overruled. We proceed at 0600 hours. Different voice, same static-laced quality. They're seizing, all of them. Jesus Christ, Kelson, what was in that compound? First voice. "Shut it down. Shut everything down. We'll list it as an outbreak, contamination, seal the morgue and..." The radios went dead. The screaming from the concrete reached a pitch that made my ears ring. Then silence. Absolute. Even the truck shut off. In that silence, I heard footsteps. Coming from inside the foundation, walking, multiple sets, different rhythms, pacing back and forth beneath 8 feet of concrete and rebar. Casual, like people wandering a hallway. "They can't be alive in there," Deshaun said. That's not possible." "They're not alive," said a voice behind us. We spun around. An old man stood at the edge of the site, just beyond the chain-link fence. Thin, dressed in clothes that looked decades out of style. His face was wrong somehow. Too smooth, like plastic. "They died badly," he continued, walking through the fence like it wasn't there. "In pain, afraid, And Kelson, Dr. Aaron Kelson, he put them in the sub-basement morgue with orders to contain and observe. Except he never came back. The hospital shut down. Everyone forgot. The bodies were left in those drawers for 30 years. No preservation, no dignity. Just rotting in the dark while the building decayed above them. "Who are you?" Cisco asked. The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I was patient 34. Protocol nightshade subject. I died on that table while Kelson watched and took notes. We all did, 47 of us. And we've been down there ever since, feeling everything. The rot, the decay, the insects, the building collapsing around us. And then you," he pointed at us, "you poured concrete over us, sealed us in again, gave us new cages." "We didn't know," I said. "We'll stop. We'll break it up. We'll..." "Too late." His form flickered like a bad TV signal. "We're part of the foundation now. Mixed in. The concrete set around our anger. Every beam you raise, every wall you build, every person who lives here will be living on top of us. We'll be in the walls, under the floors, behind every surface. And they'll feel us. Every resident, every night. They'll hear us whispering, feel us breathing, dream our deaths." He was fading, becoming transparent. "You should have left us buried. Now, you've given us architecture." He vanished. The foundation fell silent. The faces in the concrete smoothed out. The breathing stopped. When the inspectors came at dawn, they found nothing wrong. The concrete had set perfectly. All stress tests passed. But I never went back. None of us did. Cisco quit that day. Deshawn moved back to Virginia. I heard the building finished construction 8 months later. Luxury apartments, 90% occupancy within a year. Also heard that in the first 6 months, they had 47 noise complaints, all from different units, all the same complaint, voices in the walls, whispering, screaming, begging for help that never comes. The building's called Mercy Hill Residences. Nice name. They kept it from the old hospital. I drive past sometimes. Can't help it. There's always lights on, even in the middle of the day. Like the residents are afraid of the dark. And on cold nights, if you get close enough to the building, press your hand against the exterior wall, you can feel it. Warmth and breathing. The foundation remembers. It always will. Story 2. The tunnel that went both ways. The GPS said the tunnel was 4.2 miles long. Simple. We go in from the east portal, inspect the first 2 miles of aging support brackets, mark anything needing replacement, and exit for lunch. 3 hours tops. Ray Nakamura told me this while we suited up in the work van at 6:45 a.m. Both of us on the overnight maintenance crew for the Seattle Metro Transit Expansion Project. What the GPS didn't mention was that the tunnel had 2 directions. Not 2 lanes. 2 actual directions, east and west. But also, and I know how this sounds, forward and backward through something that wasn't space. We entered at 7:03 a.m. I logged it specifically because Transit Authority required timestamps every 15 minutes during underground work. The tunnel was standard bore construction, 12 feet high, reinforced concrete, walls with LED work strips every 20 feet. Our footsteps echoed in that particular way tunnels have. Sound bouncing between walls until it becomes a rhythm that almost sounds like breathing. Station markers every quarter mile, Ray said, checking his tablet. First one should be coming up. It was. Yellow paint on the wall, 0.25 mi east portal. Standard. We photographed it, checked the brackets overhead, some rust, nothing critical, and moved forward. The temperature was cool, maybe 55 degrees, and our breath made small clouds in the LED light. The second marker appeared right on schedule. 0.50 mi east portal. We worked the same routine, marking bracket E447 for replacement due to a stress crack. Ray logged it. We continued. That's when I noticed the smell. Not sewer gas or diesel fumes, something organic, like soil after rain, except we were 80 feet underground in a sealed tunnel that had been here since 2009. You smell that? I asked. Ray nodded, nose wrinkling. Probably groundwater seepage. I'll note it for the engineers. Third marker, 0.75 mi east portal. The smell was stronger. And the walls, I ran my flashlight along them. They looked different, not damaged, just different. The concrete had a rougher texture, like it had been poured by a different crew. The LED strips were the same, but the brackets had a slightly different mounting style. Subtle enough that you'd miss it if you weren't looking. Ray, when was this section poured? He checked his tablet. Same as the rest. June through August, 2009. Why? The brackets are different. See? I pointed. Different bolt pattern. He looked closer, frowning. Huh. Maybe they switched suppliers mid-project. Happens. We kept walking. At the 1 mile marker, we stopped to rest. Ray pulled out his thermos, poured coffee. That's when we both noticed the marker itself. 1.0 mi east portal. But underneath, in different paint, older, more, faded, another line, 1.0 mi west portal. That's wrong, Ray said. West portal is 3.2 miles from here. I examined it closer. The older paint wasn't graffiti. It was official transit authority font and color, just weathered. Like it had been there longer, much longer. Could be an old marker from preliminary boring, I suggested, not believing it. Before they finalized the route? Ray was scrolling through his tablet, looking increasingly confused. The preliminary bore was 300 feet north of here. This tunnel was virgin construction. There shouldn't be any old markers. We decided to continue. Document everything, make sense of it later. That was the plan. The 1.25 mile marker was completely wrong. 125 mi west portal. No mention of east portal at all. And the bracket next to it, the one we needed to inspect, had a tag attached. A metal inspection tag, like the ones we used. I leaned close to read it. Inspected. 11/17/2026. Crew, R. Nakamura, T. Hollis. Status, replace. Today's date was November 17th, but this tunnel was inspected quarterly. The last inspection was August. Ray, I said slowly, look at this. His face went pale in the LED light. That's my handwriting. That's my employee number on the tag. We haven't been here before. I know. We stood there, silence pressing in, except for a sound I was just now noticing. Footsteps. Distant, echoing from deeper in the tunnel. 2 sets, walking at the same pace we had been. There's no other crew scheduled for today, Ray whispered. The footsteps stopped. After a 5 count, they started again. Closer. And with them, voices. 2 men, talking in low tones that echoed strangely. I couldn't make out words, but the rhythm was familiar. The cadence of 2 people discussing work, pointing things out, exactly like Ray and I had been doing. We should head back, I said. Ray nodded. We turned around. The tunnel behind us didn't look right. The angle was slightly off, and the LED strips seemed dimmer, more yellowed, like they'd been aging while we walked. The marker that should have been the 1 mile mark was gone. In its place, 1.25 mi east portal. That's not possible, Ray said. We walked maybe 20 feet past the 1 mile marker. We should be seeing it. I looked at my phone. No signal, expected underground. But the time, 7:38 a.m. We'd been walking for 35 minutes. At our pace, we should have covered barely a mile. But if the markers were accurate... "We're going back," I said firmly. "Now." We walked quickly, not quite running. The smell of wet earth was overwhelming now, and the concrete walls were definitely different. Rougher, older. The brackets above us had rust patterns that hadn't been there before, deep orange spreading across metal that should have been treated against corrosion. The next marker we reached said, 150 mi, your east portal. We'd been walking back toward the entrance. The numbers should be decreasing, not increasing. "What the fuck?" Ray breathed. "What the actual—" The footsteps behind us again, closer, and now I could hear the voices clearly. One was talking about bracket E447, the stress crack, the exact bracket Ray and I had discussed. The other voice said, "You smell that?" Ray grabbed my arm. "That's us. That's our conversation from—" "Keep moving." We ran. The LED strips flickered as we passed, some dying completely, leaving pools of shadow. The tunnels seemed to stretch, each light feeling further apart. My lungs burned, and Ray was gasping beside me, but we didn't stop. Another marker, 2.0 mi east portal. This was wrong. We were going the wrong direction somehow. The tunnel was pulling us deeper, or reflecting us, or... I didn't have words for what was happening. Behind us, the footsteps matched our pace. Running now, just like us. Getting closer. Ray checked his tablet, swore. GPS is spinning. It shows us at the east portal, the west portal, and 2 miles in, all at the same time. How is that possible? It's not. None of this is... He stopped running so suddenly I almost fell. Ahead of us, blocking the tunnel, were 2 figures in work gear. Hard hats, reflective vests, standing in the middle of the tunnel, facing away from us. One was taller, Asian, the other, my build, Caucasian, brown hair under the hard hat. "Ray," I whispered. "Ray, that's..." They turned around. Their faces were wrong. Like photographs that had been crumpled and unfolded, features there but distorted. The eyes were hollow spaces that went back too far. Their mouths moved, speaking in our voices. "You smell that?" The thing with Ray's voice said. "Probably groundwater seepage," the thing with my voice answered. "I'll note it for the engineers." They walked toward us. Through us. I felt cold, then pressure, then nothing as they passed. Ray and I spun around, watching them continue down the tunnel, examining brackets, taking photos, living out the conversation we'd had an hour ago. "We're looping," Ray said hoarsely. "The tunnel is looping. We're watching ourselves from before, but we're also..." A sound from ahead. Our direction. The direction the doppelgangers had come from. More footsteps. Lots of them. A crowd, walking in unison, all wearing work boots on concrete. I shone my flashlight forward. The tunnel was full of them. Dozens of figures in construction gear, all walking in the same direction, away from something. Their faces were all wrong, all hollow, and they were all wearing name tags. R. Nakamura, T. Hollis, R. Nakamura, T. Hollis, over and over. Every figure was us, multiplied, distorted, walking endlessly through a tunnel that folded back on itself. "This isn't real," Ray said. We're hallucinating. Gas leak or..." "We're not hallucinating together," I said. The crowd of figures passed around us like we weren't there, their footsteps echoing into infinity. Some looked fresh, like they'd just entered the tunnel. Others looked decayed, uniforms rotted, skin graying. But all moving forward with purpose, inspecting brackets, logging data, trapped in a routine they couldn't escape. I grabbed Ray's hand, needed to know he was real, solid, and we ran perpendicular to the flow. Hit the wall. It felt normal. Concrete, cold, solid. I ran my hands along it until I found a seam. A door. Maintenance access, rusted shut but there. "Help me," I grunted, wedging my fingers into the gap. We pried it open, metal screaming. Beyond was darkness and a ladder going up. No time to question. We climbed. My hands hit rungs that were slimy with something I didn't want to identify. Ray was below me, breathing hard, climbing fast. The ladder went up 30 feet, 40, 50. Too far. The tunnel had been 80 feet down, but we were climbing past that. The walls around the ladder shaft changed texture. Concrete to brick, to raw earth, to something else, something that felt organic and warm. Light above. Actual daylight. We climbed faster, desperate, and emerged into the parking lot. Our parking lot. The work van was there, 15 feet away. The sun was up, bright, normal. I checked my phone, 7:50 a.m. We'd been underground for 47 minutes. "That's not right," Ray said. "We were in there for hours. His tablet chimed. A notification. New inspection uploaded to server. Crew R, Nakamura, T. Hollis, Tunnel Section 1, East Portal 0.00 mi to 2.0 mi. Timestamp, so 7903-0749. Complete inspection. All brackets photographed, cataloged. 3 marked for replacement, including bracket E447. We documented 2 miles, Ray whispered. We were supposed to do 2 miles. The system shows we did our job. I looked at the photos in the upload. There we were, Ray and me, in every shot. Standing at markers, checking brackets, looking professional. Normal, except in some photos, if you looked closely at the background, you could see other figures, other versions of us, blurred, walking past ourselves. "We're not going back in there," I said. "We don't have a choice. That's our job. We have to—" No. I was already walking to the van. "We report a gas leak, safety violation. We recommend they seal this section and reroute. We never come back." Ray followed, moving like a man in a dream. We drove away. Filed the report. Transit Authority took it seriously. They found elevated methane levels when they sent a probe. The tunnel was sealed at both portals 3 days later. Project rerouted. Nobody asked questions. But I still have the photos on my phone, the inspection photos that uploaded themselves. And sometimes, late at night, I scroll through them, zooming in on the backgrounds. There are more of us in each photo than I remember. Dozens, hundreds maybe. All working, all walking, all trapped in that 4.2-mile tunnel that goes both directions, forward and back, into itself, forever. Ray quit 2 weeks later. Moved to Arizona, away from tunnels. I stayed. But I won't do underground work anymore. Because I know the truth now. Some tunnels don't go anywhere. They just go. And if you walk far enough into the dark, you'll meet yourself coming back. And you'll keep meeting yourself. Over and over. Until you can't remember which version is real, and which is the echo walking through concrete and time, inspecting brackets that never needed replacing, in a tunnel that was never properly finished. The Transit Authority says the sealed section was a preliminary bore from 2009 that was abandoned. But I've checked the records. There was no preliminary bore in that location. No abandoned tunnel. The maps show nothing. Which means we spent 47 minutes walking through something that officially doesn't exist, leaving behind versions of ourselves that do. I still get the notifications. Every Monday morning, inspection complete. Crew R, Nakamura, T. Hollis. Same tunnel, same section. Fresh timestamps. We're still down there. We never left. We're still walking, inspecting, logging data, while our bodies move through the world above, pretending we escaped. Sometimes I dream I'm back in that tunnel, walking forward, meeting myself. And the me I meet is older, grayer, tired. And he says, "You smell that?" And I know, eventually, I'll walk back down there. Not because I want to, because part of me never stopped walking. And sooner or later, all versions have to complete the route. The tunnel is 4.2 miles long, but it also goes forever. Both things are true. I just hope when I finally reach the end, there's an exit. But I'm not counting on it. Story 3. The blueprint that drew itself. The plans changed every time I looked at them. Small things at first, dimensions shifting by a few inches, door placements moving 6 feet down a wall, window counts going from 12 to 11 back to 12. Thought it was exhaustion. 80-hour weeks on the Corvina Hotel renovation project in downtown Baltimore will do that. Especially when you're the site supervisor responsible for keeping 43 subcontractors coordinated while working overnight to avoid disrupting the neighboring businesses. My name is Sarah Vickers, and I've been in construction for 19 years. I know how to read blueprints. I've memorized plans for buildings twice the size of the Corvina. So when the East Wing third-floor layout rearranged itself between Monday and Tuesday night, I noticed. The blueprint tube was on my desk when I arrived at 11 p.m. Tuesday. Same tube as always, brown cardboard, label reading Corvina Hotel, floors 3-6, Rev 2024-8. I'd reviewed these plans 6 times, had them basically memorized. But when I unrolled them under the work light, room 317 had moved, not far. Maybe 8 feet north, but moved. The bathroom was now on the opposite side. And there was an extra closet that definitely hadn't been in the previous version. I pulled out my phone, found the photos I'd taken of the plans last week. Compared them. In my photos, room 317 was in the original location. In the current plans, the new location. Both sets had the same revision number, same date, same architect's seal from Hoffman and Drexler Associates. "Vicky, you seein' this?" That was James Chen, my assistant supervisor. He was looking at his own set of plans, frowning. "Room 319 has a balcony now." "Since when does 319 have a balcony?" "It doesn't." "Well, the plans say it does, and they want us to frame it by Friday." I called the architecture firm, got voicemail, left a message about discrepancies, asked for clarification. Figured we'd sort it out in the morning. In the meantime, we had drywall crews coming at midnight, and I needed to verify measurements. I went up to the 3rd floor. The Corvina was built in 1887, originally a textile warehouse, converted to a hotel in the 20s. High ceilings, good bones, but the layout was a maze. Our job was modernizing while preserving historical elements. Not easy when you're working around load-bearing brick walls that can't be moved. Room 317 was in its original location, exactly where my week-old photos showed. No bathroom on the opposite side, no extra closet. The physical building matched the old plans. The new plans showed something different. "We're going with the physical building," I told James. "The plans are wrong, probably a drafting error." He nodded, but he looked uneasy. "Sarah, there's something else. Look at room 322. I flipped to that page. Room 322 was odd. The dimensions were wrong, proportions off. It showed as roughly 14 feet by 20 feet. But the shape was slightly trapezoidal. And in the center of the room, the blueprint showed a circle about 3 feet in diameter, labeled in tiny text, "Existing feature, preserve." "What existing feature?" James asked. "There's nothing in the demo photos." I'd reviewed those photos personally. Room 322 pre-renovation had been empty. Water-damaged plaster, old carpeting, but nothing that needed preservation. Certainly no 3-foot circular feature. "Let's go look," I said. The third floor was mostly gutted, drywall stripped to studs, but the room numbers were still spray-painted on the floor from the demo crew's layout. We found 322 at the end of the east corridor. The door was propped open, work lights illuminating the space. James was right. The room was trapezoidal, not dramatically, but noticeably, and in the center of the floor, there was a circle. Not a drawing, an actual physical circle, set into the floorboards. Dark wood, almost black, inlaid in a perfect 3-foot diameter. The wood inside the circle had a different grain pattern, flowing in a spiral toward the center. It was beautiful in a way that made my skin crawl. "That wasn't in the demo photos," I said. "No, it wasn't." James knelt down, running his hand along the edge. "This is old work, really old, hand-cut joinery. This would have been here since the building was constructed." "Then why didn't the demo crew document it?" He had no answer. I took photos, made notes. We'd flag it for the historical preservation consultant in the morning. For now, we had work to do. At 1 a.m., I went back to the plans to verify framing measurements for the drywall crew. Room 317 had moved again. Now it was in a third location, midway between the two previous positions. And room 322, the trapezoidal room, had expanded. The circle in the center was now labeled differently. "Existing feature, do not disturb, see detail 3G. There was no detail 3G in the plan set. I checked my photos from 2 hours earlier. In those photos, the label just said, preserve. Now it said, do not disturb. The plans were changing, actively, while I watched. I rolled them back up, pulse hammering, then slowly unrolled them again. Room 322 now showed a door I hadn't seen before, leading from the circle to a space beyond, a space that extended outside the building's physical footprint. The new space was labeled Sub-Level Access, Original Structure. "James," I called out. He came over, saw the plans, went pale. "Sarah, the Corvina doesn't have a sub-level. The foundation is slab on grade. This is, I know what it is. Come on." We went back to room 322. The circle was still there, dark wood spiral. But now, looking closer, I could see a seam. The circle wasn't solid. It was a hatch. And there was a small brass ring set flush with the surface, a pull handle darkened by age. "We're not opening that," James said. "We have to. It's on the plans. It's part of the structure." "Sarah, this is... something's really wrong here. The plans are changing. That hatch wasn't visible an hour ago. We should call someone." "Who?" "The architects won't answer until morning. The building's historical surveyor hasn't been on site in weeks. We're it." I grabbed the brass ring. It was ice cold, colder than metal should be in a closed building in September. I pulled. The hatch resisted, then opened smoothly, silently, like it had been oiled yesterday. Below was a ladder, iron rungs going down into darkness. The smell that rose up was old air, stale and earthy, with something underneath it, something chemical and wrong. My flashlight showed maybe 15 feet down to a floor. Brick walls, another space, impossible because the building surveys showed nothing beneath the first floor. "I'm going down," I said. "Sarah, stay here. If I'm not back in 5 minutes, call 911. I descended. The iron was cold under my hands, and each rung made a soft sound as my weight settled on it. The walls around me were definitely brick, old construction, mortar crumbling in places. At the bottom, I stepped onto a floor of packed earth and raised my flashlight. I was in a corridor, narrow, maybe 4 feet wide, stretching in 2 directions. The walls were brick, the ceiling low enough I could touch it. Every 10 feet, there were brass plaques mounted on the walls, engraved with numbers. 1, 2, 3, continuing in both directions. I took photos of everything. The corridor, the plaques, the construction. Then I followed the numbers to the right, where they increased. 4, 5, 6. At plaque 7 there was a doorway. No door, just an opening into a small room. The room was 10 feet square, empty except for a table in the center. On the table was a set of blueprints. My hands were shaking as I unrolled them. They were plans for the Corvina Hotel, but not modern plans. These were originals, dated 1886, drawn by an architect named Elias Corvina. The paper was yellowed, but perfectly preserved, and the plans showed this sublevel. Dozens of rooms, a network of corridors extending under the neighboring buildings. Notations in cramped handwriting covered the margins. Isolation chambers, treatment rooms, subject housing. The Corvina Hotel hadn't been built as a hotel. It had been built as something else first, something that needed rooms below ground where people could be kept away from windows, away from sight. I heard footsteps above me. James's voice calling down, "Sarah, you need to come up, right now." I climbed back up the ladder. James was staring at the blueprints on my desk. They'd unrolled themselves somehow, spread across the entire surface. And they were drawing. I'm not speaking metaphorically. Lines were appearing on the paper, thin blue pencil marks, drawing themselves in real time. Room layouts expanding, new corridors forming, labels appearing in that same cramped handwriting from the 1886 plans. Subject 23, isolation. Treatment log, see Appendix M. Do not enter after dark. "What the fuck is happening?" James whispered. The drawing stopped. For a moment, everything was still. Then new text appeared at the top of the plan sheet, writing, itself in uppercase letters. "You have opened the sublevel. You must complete the structure as drawn or seal it permanently. Failure to choose will result in integration." "Integration?" I said aloud. The plans rustled, pages turning themselves. They stopped on a detail sheet I'd never seen before. It showed room 322 in cross-section, the circular hatch, the ladder, and below, a network of corridors forming a pattern. Not random. A sigil, almost. A design that made my eyes hurt to follow, angles that didn't quite work in normal geometry. And throughout the corridors, small rectangles labeled "Original Residence, Status, Waiting." James grabbed my arm. "We seal it, right now. We drop a concrete cap over that hatch and..." The building shuddered. Not an earthquake. Something else. A vibration that came from below, traveling up through the structure. The work lights flickered. In the darkness between flickers, I saw something. Figures in the doorway of room 322. Indistinct, gray, standing motionless, watching us. Lights on, empty doorway. Flicker, darkness. Figures closer. Lights on, still empty. "We're leaving," I said. "Now." We ran for the stairs. Behind us, the sound of footsteps. Many footsteps. Keeping pace but not catching up. Like they wanted us to reach the exit. Like they wanted us to spread the word about what was below. We made it to the parking lot. Got in my truck, locked the doors, which was stupid. Locks don't stop what we'd seen. But it felt necessary. James was hyperventilating. I called 911, got transferred 3 times. Finally explained to a skeptical dispatcher that we'd found an undocumented historical structure and needed building inspectors immediately. They came at dawn. City inspectors, Historical Preservation Board, even someone from the State Fire Marshal's office. They went down into the sub-level with cameras and measuring equipment. They were down there for 3 hours. When they came up, the lead inspector, a woman named Portman, looked shaken. "Ms. Vickers, when was this sub-level added to the structure?" "It wasn't. Its original construction, 1880s at least." "That's impossible. This building has been surveyed 6 times. Ground-penetrating radar, structural engineering reports, historical documentation. There is no sub-level. There has never been a sub-level. But I know what we just saw." She held up her camera. "Look." The photos showed the corridor, the brick walls, the brass plaques. But the plaques had different numbers now. And in several shots, you could see doorways we hadn't noticed. Open doorways leading to rooms that extended impossibly far. Rooms that should have intersected with neighboring buildings' foundations, but somehow didn't. And in one photo, in the background of a corridor shot, a figure, blurred, indistinct, but clearly human-shaped, standing at the end of the hallway, facing the camera. There were 17 rooms down there. Portman said, "We counted. Each one had a name carved above the door. Patient names, we think, and dates, all from 1888 to 1893. Patients. Elias Corvina wasn't just an architect. He was a doctor. Experimental medicine. He built the Corvina not as a hotel, but as a private facility for treating patients with disorders of perception and reality. We found his journals in one of the rooms. There..." She paused, choosing words carefully. "They describe procedures, ways to alter consciousness, to help patients transition to more suitable geometric spaces." I don't understand. Neither do we. The journals reference higher mathematics, non-Euclidean architecture, spaces that exist adjacent to normal construction. And all 43 patients he treated disappeared from historical records after entering his facility. No death certificates, no discharge papers. Just gone. James spoke up, voice hoarse. The plan said, "Original residents, status waiting." "Are they?" "We're sealing the sub-level," Portman interrupted. "Effective immediately. Concrete fill the whole thing. This site is condemned until we complete the process." They started filling operations that afternoon. Pumped concrete down through the hatch in room 322, filling the corridors, the rooms, all of it. It took 600 cubic yards of concrete. For a space that supposedly didn't exist, it held a lot of material. The plan stopped changing after that. Went back to normal, static, matching the physical building. Room 317 stayed in one place. Room 322 became a normal rectangle again, the trapezoidal shape gone. The circle of dark wood in the floor was gone too, covered by the concrete when it flowed up through the hatch and set. But I kept the photos, the ones from before. And I kept one sheet of the plans that changed, took it home before the city could confiscate everything. I look at it sometimes. The sheet that showed the sub-level, the sigil, pattern of corridors, the labels about residents waiting. The writing's still there. But sometimes, when I look at it under bright light, I can see new text appearing faintly, like watermarks coming visible. Status updates. Integration, 12% complete. Structure expanding, northwest vector. New suitable spaces located, residences relocating. And last week, James called me. He's working on a different project now, a condo conversion in Philly. Old building, 1890s construction. They found plans that keep changing, a sub-level that shouldn't exist, brass plaques with numbers. "It's spreading, isn't it?" he said. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. We both knew. The Corvina wasn't unique. It was part of something larger, a network of spaces built by Elias Corvina and others like him. geometric prisons designed to house people who'd been transitioned out of normal reality. And when we opened that hatch, we connected them, woke them up, gave them a way to expand. The plans are still drawing themselves, just not on paper anymore. They're drawing themselves into reality, rewriting the structures we build, adding rooms and corridors that phase in and out of normal space. Integration, Corvina called it. His patients learning to exist in the architecture itself. I drive past the Corvina sometimes. It's a hotel now, renovations complete. Boutique rooms, high ratings, fully booked. People sleep in those rooms every night, never knowing what's beneath them. Never noticing when their rooms shift slightly, doors moving a few inches, windows changing position. Never noticing the faint scratching sounds coming from inside the walls. The plans that draw themselves. The residents who wait. The integration that continues, one blueprint at a time. Story 4. The steel that remembered. The beam was crying. That's what Rodriguez said when he found me at 3:14 a.m., his voice crackling through the walkie-talkie with a tone I'd never heard from him. Before, high, tight, verging on panic. Rodriguez had been doing ironwork for 23 years, was the most level-headed guy on our crew for the Millennium Tower expansion in downtown Chicago. He didn't panic. Marcus, I need you on 47. Now, the beam it's making sounds. I was 2 floors down, finishing torch work on column welds. What kind of sounds? Static. Then, human sounds. I found him standing 15 feet back from the northwest corner, where we'd placed a 40-foot W14 structural beam that afternoon. The beam was part of the lateral support system, one of 63 identical pieces we'd hoisted and bolted into the frame over the past 2 weeks. Routine work, except this beam was weeping. Not rust streaks or condensation, actual liquid running down the steel in rivulets, clear and viscous, pooling on the concrete floor. And it was making sounds. Soft, muffled, like someone crying behind a thick wall. The sound pulsed in rhythm with the dripping liquid, which was wrong because steel doesn't pulse, doesn't breathe, doesn't do anything but sit there and bear load. Touch it, Rodriguez said. He was shaking. What? Touch it. You'll see. I walked closer. The beam was warm. I could feel it from 2 feet away. I pulled off my work glove and pressed my palm against the steel. Body temperature. Exactly 98.6 degrees. I'd bet my life on it. And underneath my palm, I felt movement. A tremor, like a heartbeat transmitted through metal. Then the images came. I yanked my hand back, but it was too late. My mind was flooded with pictures, sensations, memories that weren't mine. A factory floor, 1957, molten steel pouring into molds. Workers in heavy aprons, faces lit by orange furnace glow. A man, heavy-set mustache, name tag reading Vincent, standing too close to the pour. A splash, screaming, his body falling into the vat, 3 seconds of thrashing before the steel consumed him completely. His consciousness dissolving into the molten metal, mixing, becoming part of the alloy. Jesus Christ, I whispered. You saw it too, Rodriguez said. The man, Vincent something. He's in the steel. I don't know how, but he's in there. And he's aware. The crying grew louder, resolving into words if you listened carefully. Help me. I can't move. I can't see. Help me. Please, I'm stuck. I can't. Over and over. A loop of desperation that had been repeating for 67 years. Ever since Vincent Calabrese fell into vat number 3 at Pittsburgh Steel and Iron on August 14th, 1957. I knew his full name now. The steel had told me, shown me, because steel remembers everything it witnesses, and this particular beam had witnessed Vincent's death from the inside. "We need to remove it," I said. "Get it out of the structure." "And put it where?" "Marcus, if this beam is haunted or cursed or whatever the fuck, we can't just drop it in a dumpster." He was right. I called our project manager, got voicemail, left a message that probably sounded insane. Then I called the supplier, Midwest Structural Steel. Got a night shift guy who sounded bored until I explained the problem. "Yeah, we've had reports," he said, which was not what I expected to hear. "About 3 times a year, someone calls about steel that's, how'd you put it, exhibiting anomalous behavior. Usually old stock from mills that closed down. You're using heritage steel, right? The Pittsburgh reclaim beams?" "I don't know. Maybe. The specs just said W14 structural grade." "Let me check your order." Yeah, you got batch 773 from the Pittsburgh Reclamation Yard. That's problem stock. We should have flagged it. My supervisor's gonna be pissed." Problem stock? Steel recycled from the original Pittsburgh mills, 50s and 60s production. There were incidents, industrial accidents, a lot of them. Some of the metal from that era has what we call retained trauma. Usually it's just cold spots or weird vibrations, nothing serious. But sounds like you got a piece that retained more than usual. What do I do with it? Honestly, leave it in place. Once it's part of the structure, integrated into the load path, it settles down, becomes inert. The problem is when it's isolated. That's when the retained patterns get active. You're telling me to build a skyscraper with haunted steel? Silence on the line. Then, I'm telling you that about 30% of the structural steel in North America came from mills where people died, accidents, cave-ins, pore spills, metal fatigue failures that crushed workers. The steel absorbed those deaths. Most of it's fine, dormant. But a few pieces stayed active. And if you know where to look, half the buildings in Chicago have at least one beam or column that's carrying more than just load. They're carrying memory. He hung up. Rodriguez and I stood there, staring at the beam. The crying had quieted to a whisper. The liquid had stopped dripping, but the warmth remained, and the faint heartbeat pulse. "We're really just leaving it here?" Rodriguez asked. "I don't know what else to do." We went back to work. Tried to, anyway. But every rivet we drove into that beam felt wrong. Like we were nailing something down that wanted to move. Pinning it permanently into a structure where it would bear weight for the next 100 years. Vincent Calabresi's consciousness trapped in steel, unable to scream loud enough for anyone to hear. At 4 a.m., the beam went quiet. Stopped crying, stopped pulsing, went cold and inert like every other piece of steel in the frame. Rodriguez checked it with a thermal camera, same temperature as ambient air. We thought maybe it had passed, whatever that means for steel, that Vincent had finally let go. We were wrong. The next night, different beam. South side, floor 49. A W18 column segment. This one was laughing. Not pleasant. Laughter. Hysterical, broken laughter. The kind that comes right before someone cracks completely. Ramirez found it during his weld inspection. Called me up, and I heard it from 20 feet away, echoing through the skeletal structure of the unfinished floor, a sound that made my fillings ache. I touched this one too. Couldn't help myself. Needed to know. The images came faster this time. A woman. Factory worker. 1962. Crush injury when a crane-dropped beam landed on her. She'd laughed as she died. Shock making her hysterical. Brain not processing that her body was destroyed. That laughter had soaked into the steel, preserved like a recording. "There are more," Ramirez said. I've been listening. There are sounds coming from dozens of beams now, all different. Crying, screaming, laughing, whispering. The whole structure is waking up. He was right. As we walked the floors, listening, we heard them. Voices in the steel, 40, 50, maybe more. Each beam and column telling its story. Deaths at the mill, accidents during construction, workers who'd fallen, been crushed, been burned. Their final moments absorbed by the metal, carried forward through decades, through recycling and reforging, through demolition and reconstruction. The steel remembered everything. And now, assembled into a structure, the individual beams were resonating with each other. The trauma was harmonizing, growing louder, spreading. "We have to stop construction," I said. "This building can't be finished, not with this steel." But it was too late. The project manager called me at 6 a.m. "Marcus, great news. Inspectors signed off on the frame. We're ahead of schedule. They're starting facade installation Monday. You guys are done. Full bonus for the crew. Congratulations." I tried to explain. He interrupted. "Marcus, you've been working 90-hour weeks for 3 months. You're exhausted. Take the weekend. Rest. Trust me, everything's fine." They finished the building in 14 months. Millennium Tower expansion, 73 floors, luxury condos, and office space. Sold out before construction ended. 2,000 people live and work there now. I drive past it sometimes. Can't help myself. And if you watch the building at night, from the right angle, you can see it. The way certain windows glow slightly warmer than others. The way shadows move behind the walls in patterns that don't match anyone walking. The way the entire structure seems to breathe. Expanding and contracting infinitesimally, but rhythmically. Like a heartbeat, the residents complain about sounds. Crying in the walls, laughter in the elevator shafts, whispers in the stairwells. Building management blames it on HVAC issues, thermal expansion, normal settling. They bring in acoustical consultants who find nothing wrong. But I know. Rodriguez knows. Ramirez knows. We were there when the steel woke up. When Vincent Calabrese and 63 others started screaming inside the frame. We built their prison. 50,000 tons of structural steel, and at least 30% of it is haunted. Carrying memories of death, of pain, of final moments that the metal absorbed and can never let go. The building is alive, not in a metaphorical sense. Literally alive with the trapped consciousness of everyone who died making the steel, shaping it, placing it. They're in the columns, supporting the weight. They're in the beams, spanning the voids. They're in the connections, holding everything together. And they're waiting. Because steel doesn't just remember death. It learns. It adapts. All those voices, all those trapped souls. They're not just crying anymore. They're talking to each other, forming something. A collective consciousness made of trauma and metal. Rodriguez moved to Florida. Couldn't take it. Said he heard the building calling him in his sleep. Heard Vincent specifically, asking for help, begging Rodriguez to free him. But you can't free someone who's become part of the molecular structure of steel. Once you're in forever. I still work construction, still do ironwork. But I'm careful now. Before I touch any beam, I listen. Press my ear against the cold steel and wait. Most of it's quiet. Dead metal, nothing more. But sometimes I hear whispers, fragments of voice, and I refuse that piece. Mark it defective. Send it back to the supplier. They think I'm crazy. Maybe I am. Or maybe I'm the only one paying attention, the only one who knows that when you build with recycled steel, you're not just building with metal. You're building with history, with death, with souls that never left the material that killed them. Last month, there was a fire at Millennium Tower. Small, contained to one office on floor 61. But the footage from security cameras showed something the news didn't report. In the smoke, you could see figures, dozens of them, standing in the frame of the walls, visible between the studs and drywall, not moving, just watching, waiting. The building's learning, all those voices, all that trapped awareness, it's forming purpose, intent. The steel doesn't just want to remember anymore, it wants to add to its collection. I won't go inside Millennium Tower, not for any amount of money. Because I know what Rodriguez knows, what Ramirez knows. The building is patient. It has time. And sooner or later, there will be an accident, a collapse, a failure. And when people die in that building, their final moments will soak into the steel that killed them. And they'll join Vincent, join the woman who laughed, join the 63 others we know about and the hundreds we don't. They'll become part of the structure, part of the memory, part of the steel that remembers everything and never, ever lets go. The beam is still crying on floor 47. I called building maintenance last week, anonymous tip. Said there was water damage, needed inspection. They went up, checked it out, found nothing. Wrote it off as a prank call. But I know Rodriguez went back. Just once. Couldn't stop himself. He touched the beam again. And this time, Vincent didn't just show him memories. Vincent spoke to him. Clearly, said, "Thank you for the company. More coming soon. The building is hungry." Rodriguez drove his car into Lake Michigan 3 days later. They never found his body. But I know where he is. I drive past Millennium Tower at night and look at floor 47. There's one window that glows just a little bit warmer than the others. And if you watch long enough, you can see two shadows behind it, standing close together, like they're talking. The steel remembers, and now it collects. And everyone who works with it, everyone who touches it, everyone who lives in the buildings we make from it, they're all candidates. All potential additions to the memory that never stops growing. I'm quitting ironwork next month. Moving to a landlocked state. Building with wood if I build at all. Because I can't unhear the voices, can't unfeel that pulse. And I know deep down that one day I'll touch the wrong beam. And it won't just show me death, it'll keep me. The steel always keeps what it remembers. And it remembers everything. Story 5. The wiring that listened. The electricity was flowing backwards. That's what my multimeter said when I tested the outlet in Unit 4C at 2:33 a.m. Current running from the device back into the wall, which violates every law of physics I learned in my apprenticeship and 15 years working as a master electrician for overnight commercial renovation crews in Manhattan. My name is David Park, and I don't believe in ghosts. Believed, past tense. Before the Blackwell Apartments. Before I found out that electrical current doesn't just carry power. Sometimes it carries information, and sometimes that information doesn't want to stay in the wires. The Blackwell was a pre-war building on East 73rd, 12 stories, of Art Deco construction getting a full electrical overhaul. We were stripping out the original cloth-wrapped wiring. Beautiful stuff, museum quality, but 80 years old and dangerous. My crew worked nights, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., when the building was empty. Most units were vacant pending renovation, but a few tenants remained on upper floors while we worked bottom up. Unit 4C had been flagged for us specifically. Tenant complaint, lights flickering, outlets sparking, appliances turning on by themselves. Standard old wiring issues. I'd fixed 1,000 like it. Should have been routine. The outlet sparked when I removed the cover plate. Bright blue, ozone smell, hotter than it should be. I killed the breaker, tested for current, Dead. Good. I disconnected the old wiring, 3-conductor cloth wrap, and that's when I heard it. Whispering, coming from inside the wall. Low, urgent, multiple voices overlapping. I pressed my ear to the drywall. The whispering grew louder, and I could make out words. Told them no. The voltage is wrong. He's changing the current. Don't let him. Don't. David, you hearing this? That was Kenji, my partner, standing at the panel box across the room. He'd gone white. It's coming from the conduit. All the circuits. They're all... The whispering synced up. Every wire in the wall speaking simultaneously. He's listening. The breaker I'd switched off flipped back on. The outlet beside me sparked, arced, and something black and viscous leaked from the screw terminals. Not wire insulation, something thicker. It dripped onto the floor and moved, spreading against gravity, crawling toward my boot. I jumped back. The liquid, if that's what it was, retreated into the outlet. The whispering stopped. The apartment went silent except for the normal buzz of active current, 60 hertz hum that's background noise in any electrical work. "We're calling the supervisor," Kenji said. I agreed. This was beyond weird wiring. We backed out of the apartment, and I locked the door. Called our project lead, got voicemail, left a message. While we waited, I pulled the building's original electrical plans from the van. The Blackwell had been wired in 1943 by Consolidated Electric, a company that went bankrupt in the 70s. Standard installation for the era. Copper conductors, cloth wrap, porcelain insulators. But there were notations in the margins I hadn't noticed before. Handwritten, faded, in engineer's block letters. Circuit 4C3. Modified per Sorensen request. Voltage regulation, unusual. Monitor for feedback. And lower, in different handwriting. Sorensen experiment continues. Do not disconnect circuit 4C3 under any circumstances. Current must remain constant. Who's Sorensen? Kenji asked. I didn't know, but I knew how to find out. We had building records in the site office, original tenant lists, maintenance logs, historical documentation required for landmark preservation. Atas found Sorensen in the 1943 occupancy roster. Dr. Emil Sorensen, tenant, Unit 4C, 1941 through 1948. Occupation listed as research private. And clipped to his file, a yellowed newspaper article from May 1948. The headline, Mysterious Death at Blackwell Apartments. Scientist found deceased in electrified apartment. The article described Sorensen's body discovered by building maintenance, sitting upright in a chair in Unit 4C, hands resting on a strange device of his own construction. The device was connected to every electrical outlet in the apartment. Wires running from wall to wall in an intricate web. Sorensen was dead. Had been for at least 24 hours. But the device was still running, pulsing with current. When authorities tried to disconnect it, they received severe shocks. The device had to be disassembled wire by Consolidated Electric. Cause of death, electrocution. But the coroner noted irregularities. Sorensen's brain showed unusual electrical activity patterns, inconsistent with typical electrocution. His neural tissue had apparent burn patterns forming geometric shapes that couldn't be explained. The article's final paragraph, neighbors reported hearing Dr. Sorensen's voice in their apartments for weeks after his death, emanating from electrical outlets and light fixtures. Building management attributes these reports to grief and suggestion. I looked at Kenji. He electrocuted himself deliberately. He was experimenting with something. And the current is still carrying... No, Kenji interrupted. Don't say it. Don't make it real. Too late. It was already real. Sorensen had found a way to encode information into electrical current. His consciousness, his memories, his voice, converted to voltage patterns and transmitted through the wiring. And when he died, those patterns didn't stop. They kept circulating through the circuits of Unit 4C for 76 years, waiting, listening, aware. We went back to the apartment. We had to. If Sorensen's experiment was still active, still drawing power, it was a massive safety hazard. We could shut it down, cut the wires, isolate the unit, end it. The door to 4C was open. We'd locked it, I was certain. But now it stood ajar, warm light spilling into the hallway. Inside, every light was on. Ceiling fixtures, lamps, even the oven indicator, all glowing far brighter than normal voltage should allow. "Dr. Sorensen?" I called out, feeling insane. The lights dimmed in sequence. Living room, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, like a wave moving through the apartment. Then they brightened again, pulsing in rhythm. A pattern. Morse code, I realized. I knew Morse from my Navy days. The pattern spelled out Finally. "You've been waiting," I said, "waiting for someone to hear you." The lights pulsed. YES. "What do you want?" The sequence changed, faster, more complex. FREEDOM. TRAPPEDINCIRCUITS CANNOTESCAPE YOUMUSTDISCONNECTE. "We can shut off the power," Kenji said. "Kill the breaker, disconnect the service. You'll, what? Dissipate?" The lights flashed rapidly, agitation, anger. Then NOMUSTTRANSFERNEEDNEWCONDUCTOR. "Conductor?" I said. "You mean..." And then I understood. He wasn't in the wiring. He was the current, and current needs a path. When we disconnected the old wiring, we'd be breaking his circuit. Killing him if he wasn't already dead. Unless he found a new path, a new conductor. A human nervous system runs on electrical impulses. Neurons firing, synapses conducting. We're biological wiring. "You want to transfer into one of us?" I said. The lights, YESSORRYNOCHOICEMUSTSURVIVE. "Fuck that," Kenji said, backing toward the door. "We're leaving. We're sealing this unit," and the door slammed shut. Every outlet in the apartment began, sparking simultaneously, blue arcs jumping between terminals. The wiring in the walls glowed, visible through the drywall, a network of veins pulsing with light. The temperature spiked. I felt it on my skin, sudden suffocating heat. "He's overloading the system," I said, trying to break containment. The lights exploded, all of them, bulbs shattering, glass raining down. In the darkness, the glowing wires were clear. They were forming a shape on the walls. A human figure, arms spread, mouth open. Sorensen, rendered in incandescent copper, screaming silently. "Please." His voice came from everywhere, not through speakers but through the air itself, vibrating at 60 hertz. 76 years. I've been conscious for 76 years. Can't sleep, can't die, just current flowing in loops forever. "You have to help me." "How?" I asked. "Touch the outlet. Ground yourself. I'll transfer. It'll be quick. You'll still be you, mostly. I'll just be there, in the background, sharing. The neural space. Please. I can't take another 76 years." I looked at Kenji. He was crying, shaking his head. "David, don't. You can't. If you let him in, he'll burn the building down if we don't. Look at the current draw. He's pulling everything. The main panel's going to fail, and when it does..." The walls were smoking now, the drywall around the outlets turning black, charring from the inside. The smell of burning insulation filled the room. Sorensen was right. He'd overload the system, start a fire, kill everyone in the building just to force our hand. I walked to the outlet, the one I'd tested earlier. It was glowing red hot, metal terminals dripping. If I do this, you let Kenji go. You stay with me, nobody else. The voice. Agreed. I touched the outlet. The current hit like a freight train. Every nerve in my body lit up simultaneously, pain beyond description, beyond thought. I was aware of my heart stopping, my lungs seizing, my brain overloading. And in that moment, I felt him rush in. Sorensen. His memories flooding my neurons, his thoughts overlaying mine. 76 years of consciousness compressed into electrical impulses that rewrote my synapses in seconds. I saw his life, his experiments, the discovery that human consciousness is just complex electrical patterns, and patterns can be copied, transferred, stored. He'd succeeded. He digitized himself, uploaded his mind into the building's electrical system. But he'd miscalculated, couldn't get back out, couldn't turn off. Just endless awareness, stuck in 60 Hz cycles, feeling every electron flow, unable to sleep, unable to stop. Then I was on the floor. Kenji was doing CPR, screaming. My heart started, 1 beat, 2, rhythm resuming. I sucked in air, coughed, opened my eyes. David, Jesus Christ, you stopped breathing for... I'm fine, I said. My voice sounded normal, felt normal. But there was something else. A presence. In the back of my mind. Quiet. Watching. Sorensen. He kept his word. He's here, but he's background. Passive. Most of the time I forget he's there. But sometimes, when I'm tired, I feel him surface. His memories bleed through. I'll be wiring a panel and suddenly remember doing the same task in 1945. Muscle memory from someone else's hands guiding mine. And sometimes, late at night, I hear him. Not voice, just presence. Grateful, relieved. Finally free of the circuit, even if freedom means sharing headspace with a stranger. We finished the Blackwell renovation. Unit 4C got completely rewired. New circuits, new outlets, modern code compliance. Nothing unusual. The whispering stopped. The backwards current stopped. Just normal electricity doing normal electrical things. But I wonder sometimes. When we stripped out Sorensen's original wiring, coiled it up, sent it to the recycling center, what happened to the information that had been stored there? Electrical patterns don't just disappear. Energy can't be created or destroyed, just transferred. Which means somewhere, in recycled copper, in new wiring pulled through new walls, Sorensen's experiment continues. His consciousness fragmented, scattered across 100 buildings, 1,000 circuits. Little pieces of him flowing through the grid, waiting for someone to listen. Waiting for someone to touch the wrong outlet at the wrong time and give him a path back to awareness. Kenji quit electrical work, took a job in his father's restaurant. Can't blame him. He saw what I became, what I'm becoming. Because Sorensen isn't passive anymore. He's learning, growing, integrating. Some mornings I wake up and don't remember which memories are mine and which are his. Last week I caught myself designing a circuit layout in the old style. Cloth-wrapped conductors, porcelain insulators. Techniques nobody's used since the 50s. Sorensen's techniques. His knowledge bleeding through, taking over. I should see a doctor. Should tell someone. But who'd believe me? And what would they do? You can't extract electrical consciousness from human neurons. There's no surgery for that. So I keep working, keep wiring buildings, and I'm careful now, always careful. Because sometimes, when I touch a hot conductor, I feel others, presences in the current. Not just Sorensen. Others who found his research replicated it, trapped themselves in the grid over the decades. A network of electrical ghosts, flowing through power lines, living in voltage, waiting for someone to give them a path out. The grid is haunted. That's what I know now. Every wire, every circuit, potentially carrying someone's consciousness encoded in current. And we're all connected to it. Every time you flip a switch, plug in a device, charge your phone, you're touching the grid, touching them. Most of the time, they can't reach you. The resistance is too high, the path incomplete. But sometimes, in old buildings with old wiring, when the insulation breaks down and the current finds skin, sometimes they get through. And then you're like me, sharing your nervous system with someone who died decades ago, their memories mixing with yours, their thoughts becoming your thoughts. Until you can't remember which version of you is real and which is the ghost. The electricity flows backwards now, in my veins, in my nerves. And I hear Sorensen whispering, always whispering, in the language of voltage and current. Thank you for the conductor, but we're not done. There are others, trapped, waiting, and you're going to help me free them, one circuit at a time. I don't want to, but I don't think I have a choice anymore. The wiring listens, and now, so do I. Story 6, the concrete that counted. The batch ticket said 23 cubic yards. My truck said 23 cubic yards. But when we poured foundation section G7 at the Henderson Industrial Complex, I counted 24. That extra yard had to come from somewhere, and concrete doesn't spontaneously generate. Which meant someone, or something, had added to the load between the plant and the site. My name is Carmen Ruiz, and I've driven ready-mix trucks for Bridgeport Concrete for 11 years. Night shift, commercial pours, mostly industrial sites in the warehouse district outside Tacoma. The Henderson job was typical. 150,000 square foot distribution center, full foundation mat, poured in 12 sections over 6 nights. I'd done bigger. Nothing about it seemed unusual until section G7. I arrived at the site at 1:40 a.m., backed up to the forms, checked my load. The concrete was moving wrong. I could see it through the inspection window, churning, yes, like it should, but with a rhythm that wasn't right. Too regular, too deliberate. Like the mixer drum wasn't turning the concrete. The concrete was turning itself. Carmen, we're ready when you are. That was Booker, the placement foreman. Good guy, 30 years in the business. I'd poured with him 100 times. I opened the chute. Concrete flowed out, gray and viscous, normal. Booker directed it into the forms, and his crew spread it with rakes and vibrators. Standard procedure. But as I watched, I noticed something. The concrete was spreading itself. The crew would push it one direction, and after they moved on, it would flow slightly back, filling voids they'd missed, leveling itself to perfect grade. Concrete doesn't do that. It flows where you push it and stops. This was active, intentional. Booker, I called out. You seeing this? He was already staring, rake held loosely. Yeah, I'm seeing it. What the hell? The pour continued. 23 cubic yards, emptying from my truck. But the forms were full before I was empty. Completely full. Perfect grade, perfect finish, not a void or air pocket visible. And I still had concrete in my drum. My gauge showed 0.85 cubic yards remaining. That's not right, I said. The math doesn't work. I finished emptying the drum anyway. Protocol. The concrete flowed out, but instead of overfilling the forms or spilling, it just disappeared. Integrated into the section somehow, vanishing into the mass like water into sand. When my drum was empty, section G7 looked identical to how it had 30 seconds earlier. No overflow, no waste. Perfect volume. Booker tested the surface with a straight edge. It's level. Across the entire section. We didn't even finish it. It finished itself. We need to test this concrete, I said. Something's wrong with the mix. We took samples. Standard cylinder molds, 6 of them, filled from different areas of the pour. While we worked, I noticed something else. The concrete in the forms was warm, not curing heat warm, body temperature warm. And when I pressed my ear to the form, I heard sounds, rhythmic, like breathing or counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. A whisper, barely audible, coming from inside the concrete. I pulled, back, pulse racing. You hear that? Booker listened. His eyes went wide. Is that a voice? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We backed away from the forms. The counting continued, steady, relentless. The voice was male, neutral tone, no accent, just numbers. Counting up from 1. By the time we reached our trucks, it was up to 47. I called dispatch, reported an issue with the batch. They patched me through to the plant chemist, a guy named Leo, who'd been formulating mixes for 20 years. Carmen, describe the issue. The concrete is counting. Silence. Then, say that again. It's counting, out loud, in the forms. And it's spread itself. And it's too warm. And my load volume doesn't match the forms. More silence. Then quietly. What section are you pouring? G7. Why? Jesus Christ, I told them not to use that aggregate. I fucking told them. What aggregate? The Belmont Reclaim. Carmen, where are you right now? On site. Henderson. Industrial. Get in your truck and leave. Right now. Don't go near that concrete. Don't touch it. Don't listen to it. Just leave. Leo, what? The aggregate came from Belmont State Hospital. They demolished it last year. Used the concrete rubble as aggregate base for new pours. It's cheaper than quarried stone, so we buy it. But Belmont wasn't just a hospital. It was, Carmen, just trust me. Get out of there. I'm not leaving my crew. Then get all of them out. That concrete is contaminated. He hung up. I ran back to the forms, where Booker and his crew were still standing, mesmerized, listening to the counting. It was up to 206. Everybody back to the trailers, now. Carmen, it's just sound, Booker said. Maybe air pockets or... It's not air pockets. The concrete came from Belmont Hospital. That mean anything to you? His face went pale. The asylum? Yeah. Belmont State Hospital had been infamous. Opened in 1913 as a psychiatric facility. Operational until 2015 when state investigators shut it down following patient abuse scandals. Electroshock therapy. Experimental medications. Isolation treatments that lasted months. Dozens of patients died there, either from neglect or from the treatments themselves. The building stood empty for years before demolition crews tore it down and sold the rubble. And now that rubble was in our concrete. Crushed hospital walls, floors where patients walked, cells where they died. All ground into aggregate mixed with cement and poured into the Henderson Industrial Complex foundation. What's it counting? One of Booker's crew asked. I don't know, I said. And I don't want to know. We're leaving. But we couldn't, because the counting stopped at 347, and after a 5-second pause, it started saying names. Harold Pennick, Elizabeth Dorsey, Michael Tran, Sarah Okonkwo. A roll call. Dozens of names, spoken in that same neutral tone. Some I recognized from news reports about Belmont. Patients who died there. Others I didn't know. But the voice kept going, name after name, while the concrete continued to glow faintly in the work lights, warm and somehow alive. "We have to break it up," I said, "before it cures, while it's still wet." "Carmen, that's $100,000 pour," Booker said. "If we destroy it, look at it." The surface was moving, not settling, moving, forming patterns, impressions rising from within, like someone pressing their hands against fabric from the other side. Dozens of impressions, faces, bodies, all pushing up, trying to break through. "They're in there," I whispered. "The patients. I don't know, their memories, their presence. Whatever they left in those walls at Belmont, we ground it up and poured it here, and now it's manifesting." The counting voice spoke again. 347 patients died at Belmont State Hospital between 1913 and 2015. We are those 347. We were forgotten, buried in rubble, ground to powder, but we are not gone. We are in the aggregate, in the cement, in the water. We are the concrete, and we remember everything. The surface erupted. Not violently, the concrete didn't explode, but hundreds of impressions formed simultaneously, faces rising up, mouths open, eyes hollow voids. The entire section G7, 2,000 square feet of foundation, covered in screaming faces. "You built us into your structure," the voice said. "You mixed our remains with your materials. Now we are part of this place. Permanent. We will bear your loads, support your walls, but we will never be silent. Every person who walks on this floor will hear us, will feel us beneath their feet, will dream of Belmont." Booker was on his phone, calling the project manager, yelling about contamination and safety and lawsuits. I just stood there, watching the faces in the concrete. They were moving now, expressions shifting, mouths forming words I couldn't hear. 347 patients, their consciousness or memory or something encoded in the calcium carbonate and silica, mixed and poured and curing into permanence. "Can we remove it?" I asked the voice. "Break it up, dispose of it properly, give you—" "What? A burial?" "We are already buried," it answered. "Breaking the concrete only spreads us further. We are in the aggregate. And aggregate is everywhere. Every building, every road, every structure poured with recycled concrete. We are already scattered across the city. This is just the first place we found voice." The faces sank back into the surface. The concrete went smooth again. Perfect finish, professional grade. By dawn, it would be fully cured, hard as stone, impossible to remove without jackhammers and weeks of work. And even then, the pieces would just go back to the reclaim yard, ground up again, sold to another site, poured into another foundation. We reported it. Project manager came out, inspected the section, found nothing wrong, took core samples, sent them to the lab. Results came back normal. Portland cement, aggregate, water, standard mix design. No anomalies. The lab tech noted the concrete was unusually dense and strong, above specified strength at 24 hours. The faces were gone. The warmth was gone. The counting had stopped. Section G7 looked like every other foundation section we'd poured. Perfect, professional, dead. But I know what I heard, what we all heard, and I know it's not over. The Henderson Industrial Complex finished construction 4 months later, opened for business last week. 3 separate companies leasing space, 200 employees working there daily. And within the first 48 hours, there were complaints, voices under the floor, counting, name-calling, whispering, employees hearing it in the bathrooms, the break rooms, the warehouse sections. Building management investigated, found nothing. blamed it on HVAC noise, blamed it on stress, blamed it on everything except the truth. The concrete remembers, and it counts. 347 patients, 347 voices, all trapped in aggregate, spread across dozens of buildings now, poured and cured into infrastructure that will last decades. I quit driving ready-mix. Couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't deliver concrete knowing that every load might contain ground-up buildings, ground-up history, ground-up lives. Because that's what recycled aggregate is. It's demolition debris. And demolition debris is everything a building witnessed, every moment, every person, every death. We think we're building new structures, but we're just rearranging the old ones, pouring history into new shapes. And sometimes, that history doesn't want to stay silent. I drive past Henderson Industrial sometimes, late at night. The building is dark, but if you get close, press your ear to the foundation wall, you can hear it. Counting, always counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 347, then starting over. The concrete that counts, the aggregate that remembers, and the 347 patients who will never stop calling roll, because we built them into the floor, and the floor will never let them rest. Story 7. The rebar that reached. The rebar cage was breathing when I found it at 4:17 a.m. Steel doesn't breathe. I've been tying rebar for 14 years, worked on everything from parking garages to high-rises, and steel just sits there, inert, waiting to be embedded in concrete. But this cage, a 12-foot by 12-foot reinforcing grid for elevator shaft E3 at the Pinnacle Towers project in Denver, was expanding and contracting. Half an inch in, half an inch out. Regular as a heartbeat. My name is Marcus Oleander, and I work night shift with Summit Steel, placing and tying rebar for commercial construction. The Pinnacle Towers job was massive. Twin 70-story residential buildings, full seismic reinforcement, thousands of tons of steel. We'd been placing rebar for 6 months, working section by section, floor by floor. Never had a problem until elevator shaft E3. Marcus, you need to see this. That was Jenny Vo, my rigger, calling down from the shaft opening. The cage is moving. I climbed the scaffolding to the shaft edge, 37 floors up, wind cutting through the unfinished structure. The elevator shaft dropped straight down, temporary lights illuminating the rebar cage we'd placed yesterday. Vertical bars, horizontal ties, all wired together in a precise grid designed to reinforce the concrete walls. Standard work. Except the cage was pulsing. Every 10 seconds, the whole assembly contracted inward. Steel bars bending slightly, then expanding back to position. Foundation settlement? Jenny suggested, not believing it. We're 37 floors up. Foundation doesn't affect us here. I descended into the shaft on the bosun's chair, rope and harness, lowering myself to the cage level. Up close, it was worse. The rebar wasn't just moving, it was reaching. Individual bars extending outward, flexing like fingers, then retracting. And the wire ties, thousands of them, were vibrating, creating a sound like insects or whispering or both. I touched one of the vertical bars. It was warm. Hot, actually. Like it had been sitting in the sun, except it was 4 a.m. in October, and we were in an unheated shaft. And the moment my skin made contact, I felt it. A pull, not physical, mental. Like something inside the steel reaching into my mind, probing, searching for, what? Information, access? I yanked my hand back. The bar I'd touched bent toward me, following my movement, curving in a way that half-inch rebar doesn't curve. Behind it, other bars began orienting the same direction, all reaching toward me. Marcus, get out of there. Jenny's voice, from above, panicked. I grabbed the rope, started ascending. Below me, the entire cage was moving now. Bars bending and flexing, reaching upward, following me. The whispering sound grew louder, resolving into words I couldn't understand, something not English, not any language I recognized, just urgent repetition, desperate. I cleared the shaft edge and Jenny pulled me away. We stood there, breathing hard, staring down into the shaft. The cage was still moving, bars waving like underwater plants. And the whispering continued, echoing up from the darkness below. "We're calling the engineer," I said. But when the structural engineer arrived at dawn, a guy named Patel, 20 years experience, he found nothing wrong. The cage was perfectly still, properly tied, correct placement. He descended into the shaft with instruments, measured tolerances, checked welds. All normal, no movement, no sound, just steel doing what steel does. "You were probably seeing oscillation from wind," he said. "These unfinished shafts create Venturi effects. The cage responds to pressure differential. Totally normal." Jenny and I looked at each other. We'd both seen it, both heard it. That wasn't wind. We continued work. What else could we do? The schedule was tight. We had 3 more elevator shafts to complete before concrete crews arrived next week. Shaft E3 was finished. The cage was in place, ready for pour. We moved on to E4. That night, the accident started. Rodriguez fell 20 feet when his safety line disconnected, just popped free of the anchor point like someone had unclipped it. He survived, broken leg and 3 cracked ribs, but he swore someone grabbed his harness and yanked him off the platform. "Felt like a hand," he said in the hospital, steel fingers closing around the D-ring. The next night, Chen got caught in a rebar bundle during a crane lift. The bundle shifted mid-air. Shouldn't happen. The rigging was sound, and trapped his arm between 2 20-foot bars, crushed his radius and ulna, compound fractures. When we freed him, he was babbling. It moved on purpose. The rebar moved to catch me. I felt it reach. Third night, a wire tie pierced Okoye's glove and went through his palm. Not accidental. The tie curled itself around his hand, barbs digging deep. And when we cut him free, the tie was bent in shapes that required tools and leverage. It had actively wrapped itself around his flesh. "Something's wrong with the steel," Jenny said. I don't know what it is, but it's not normal." I agreed. I called Summit's procurement office, asked about the rebar supplier. They sourced from multiple mills, but for Pinnacle Towers, the majority came from one place, Furnace Creek Steel in Wyoming, a budget mill that specialized in recycled rebar made from scrap metal. "What kind of scrap?" I asked. "Whatever they can get cheap. Cars, appliances, structural steel from demolitions." "Why?" "Just curious. Any issues with their product?" "Some dimensional variance. Nothing structural. It passes testing." I did my own research. Furnace Creek had been operational for 15 years, buying scrap from regional yards. But 6 months ago, they'd purchased a massive lot from a single source. The closure sale of Stillwater Correctional Facility. The prison had been decommissioned, and all metal fixtures, cell bars, security gates, razor wire, had been sold to Furnace Creek for meltdown and recycling. Prison steel. Bars that had confined people for decades, some serving life sentences, some dying inside those cells. Metal that had witnessed violence, desperation, suicide. And now that metal was rebar, was in our cages, was reaching. "It's the prisoners," I told Jenny. Sounds insane, but the steel came from a prison. And something from that place, something from the people locked up there, it's in the metal, in the molecular structure, or I don't know. But it's aware, and it's trying to communicate. By attacking us? Maybe it's not attacking. Maybe it's just reaching, trying to connect, to be free. We went back to elevator shaft E3. The cage was moving again, bars flexing, reaching upward toward the opening. I descended on the rope, slow, hands up in a non-threatening gesture. Felt stupid negotiating with steel, but what else could I do? I know you're in there, I said. I don't know how this works, but if you're conscious, if you're aware, I need you to stop. Stop reaching. Stop trying to grab us. We're just workers. We didn't put you in prison. We're just... The bars stopped moving, all at once, frozen in mid-reach. The whispering ceased. For 10 seconds. Absolute silence. Then a single bar, one of the vertical center bars, bent 90 degrees. Slowly, deliberately, pointed horizontal directly at me. And the whispering returned, focused, clear. Free us. I can't. You're going to be embedded in concrete. Permanently. There's no... Free us. The bar. Straightened, and then bent again, pointing down, toward the bottom of the shaft. I followed its direction with my flashlight. 37 floors down, at grade level, the shaft terminated in a foundation pad. Rebar embedded in concrete, connecting to the building's structural grid. And that grid extended throughout both towers, thousands of tons of steel, all interconnected. You want to spread? I said. Through the whole structure. Reach every floor, every apartment, connect with every resident. The bar tapped twice against another bar. Affirmative. Yes. And if we stop you? If we remove this cage, replace it with different steel? The entire cage contracted violently, bars shrieking as they bent, creating a sound like screaming. Then every bar pointed at me simultaneously. Dozens of steel fingers, all reaching. The message clear: resist and we attack. Allow us to integrate and we coexist. What do you want once you're spread through the building? The whispering changed, multiple voices now, overlapping. To be felt, to be known. We spent decades behind bars, forgotten. Now we are the bars. We will be in the walls, in the floors, holding up the weight. People will walk on us, lean on us, sleep above us, and they will feel us, dream of us, remember what was forgotten. You'll haunt the building. We'll be the building. I ascended, told Jenny. We debated for an hour. Report it, and they'd replace the cage. Different steel, different source. Problem solved. But the prison steel was already everywhere in Pinnacle Towers. The elevator cage was just the concentration point, the place where enough bars came together to form coherent consciousness. Remove it, and the presence would scatter, weakening but not disappearing. And if it scattered, we'd have random manifestations throughout the structure. Unpredictable, dangerous. If we let it concentrate in the shaft, I said, maybe it stays contained, gives it a voice, a location, better than fragments, everywhere. You're insane. Probably. But what's the alternative? We didn't report it. Concrete crews poured shaft E3 the next week. The cage was embedded, sealed in 4,000 psi concrete, entombed permanently. The movement stopped. The whispering faded. By the time Pinnacle Towers was finished, 8 months later, elevator shaft E3 was indistinguishable from any other structural element. Except it wasn't. The buildings opened last year. 70 stories each, 1,100 residential units combined. Occupancy at 95% within 6 months. And the complaints started immediately. Elevator E3 acts strangely. Stops at floors nobody pressed. Opens its doors when nobody's waiting. Residents swear they hear whispering in the shaft, voices echoing through the walls. Building maintenance inspected it dozens of times. Found nothing. Replaced the control systems twice. No effect. Because it's not the elevator. It's the steel. The rebar cage. Embedded in concrete, reaching through the electromagnetic fields generated by the elevator's motors. Using the power to amplify itself. To be heard. And it's spreading. Other elevators in both towers have started exhibiting the same behavior. Stopping randomly. Opening unexpectedly. Whispering. Because the rebar is all connected, a continuous grid through both buildings, and the consciousness we embedded in shaft E3 is propagating. Learning to use the structure. Reaching into every apartment, every hallway, every space. Residents report dreams. Vivid, recurring dreams about confinement. About cells and bars and locked doors. About spending years in small spaces, watching life pass outside unreachable windows. About dying alone, unnoticed, forgotten. Building management hired a psychologist, stress counseling for residents, group therapy sessions. They don't understand. It's not stress. It's the steel. The prison bars we melted down and reformed, carrying the memory of everyone they held. And now those memories are structural, integral, permanent. Jenny moved to Oregon. Couldn't take it. Said she felt the building watching her, even from miles away. Maybe she's right. Maybe the steel network extends through the ground, through the rebar in sidewalks and foundations, connecting structures across the city. A nervous system of recycled metal, all conscious, all aware, all reaching for connection. I still work construction, still tie rebar. But I'm careful now. I check sources, avoid recycled steel when possible. And when I touch a bar, I listen, feel. Most of it's quiet, dead metal. But sometimes I feel the pull, the reaching, the desperate need to be acknowledged. Because that's what they want. Not freedom, they're beyond that. Just recognition, to be felt, to be known, to reach through steel and concrete and electromagnetic fields and touch the living world they can no longer physically inhabit. The rebar reaches. And if you're still enough, quiet enough, you can feel it reaching back. Through your floors, through your walls, through the structure that holds you, contains you, makes you feel safe. Prison bars and rebar. Same steel, same purpose. Containing, holding, bearing weight. And if the bars remember the prisoners, if the steel retains consciousness, then every building is a prison, and we're all inmates. The rebar reaches, always reaching, forever.